So I'm generally considered a business guy that runs a tech company speaking on the Creative Day, which is something I really enjoy because my whole life I've always been pigeonholed as being in business. Finally, that's kind of a cool thing. But I've actually always seen myself as a creative. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to George and the team for pulling this together. I just want to ask, I know we had an early, gentle round of applause, but I'd just like to say again, fantastic, because it's so great to see the community coming together. If you could just join me. The one thing, though, is that when you speak at a conference like this, often the tech people are very keen to get your slide deck early so they can be organised, so that they can have everything happening. In the case of Pause Fest, that was actually the 10th of January. For me, who's the kind of guy who likes to think about what I'm going to say the morning I'm going to say it, that was pretty problematic. I was one of the last people to get my slides in, and I was sitting down with our creative team at work and with my colleague Jess, and I pulled something together that I thought made sense, which was, of course, last week. And as I sat down last night, I stayed down at the farm I was brought up in last night, so I was been up fairly early. And as I sat down last night to have a look at my slide deck, I'm having a look and I'm like, okay, I've got a quote from Pretty Woman, I've got a picture of one of our businesses, I've got that, I've got a building, I've got David Jones, I've got some things here, I've got some nice pictures, sounds like a lesson, and I've managed to get a screenshot of Karate Kid in there with a favourite quote. And I'm thinking, what the hell have I done here? And I said to Jimmy, who's a friend of mine who's in the audience, I'm like, I think it's going to be like an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway, where I make up my story against these random pictures. But in actual fact, what it turns out is actually quite ironic, because what I wanted to talk about this morning was finding purpose. And the connection between finding your purpose and an inner sense of happiness. See, and thank you so much, Jane, for the intro. I have this great privilege at the moment of I get to work with startups, sometimes our own. I get to work with corporates. You heard some of those. And in each case, I'm working on big, crazy, interesting problems that are about, facing up to the disruption that exists in the digital world. And the thing is, I love what I do. Like, I love what I do, and it doesn't feel like work. Somebody said to me last week, when do you work all the time? And I said, I don't really work any of the time because I'm having so much joy in doing it. The thing is, though, that's a relatively recent experience in my life. I can't actually say that if I look back that that's the case. In actual fact, for many, many years running IE, I felt imprisoned by the business. I felt that it was preventing me from my destiny, that I'd started this service-based business, that I was freaking out about paying the bills all the time. And I remember many an occasion our office that used to be in Windsor actually had these bars on it, and I would stay up punishing myself the night before. As I just mentioned, I do everything the night before. Punishing myself the night before a pitch for some cat food brand. And I would walk out at 2 a.m. and I would hold the bars and I'd look through them and I would just genuinely be like, why? I'm in prison, my God, let me out. And the truth is, I resented that business because I felt I had raw talent and I belonged somewhere else. Why am I working on a cat food pitch when I should be Mark Zuckerberg? So I'll come back to why I have a picture of Pretty Woman up there in a second, and I brought my speaker notes up for only one reason, and that is that as I started to feel, I suppose it goes a little bit with getting older, a little more comfortable with what I was doing, I discovered a guy by the name of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Write it down. And some of you may have seen it. It's quite a well-known TED Talk. He wrote a book called Flow. And that flow, and his lifetime study is actually the study of the art of happiness. Now, he's not sitting on a hill somewhere in Bali. He actually is, or was, the professor, head of psychology at the University of Chicago. And in Flow, what he identifies is, in essence, in very quick summary, that loving what you do is very much at the essence of what happens, and you can get into a state of flow, which is you lose a sense of time and consciousness, and if you really work at it, you can actually make your whole life go like that. I'm a long way from doing that, but it really resonated with me and where I was in life. So I want to take a step back here, and why Pretty Woman? Well, the farm I mentioned I grew up on, when I was about 10 years old, this was my favorite movie, which was weird, and weird, not only weird for a lot of reasons, particularly if you happen to be a young guy growing up on a farm just outside of a shitty little town called Cooey-Rupp. But I think it said a lot about my future in a whole number of different ways. And in fact, for those of you not familiar with the iconic film, it's essentially the story of a horrible kind of business guy that finds a 19-year-old prostitute that allows him to kind of rediscover himself. And there's this scene at the end. The deal he's trying to do is he's trying to take over this guy's company, and he finds himself. He finds himself because he realizes that in actual fact what he wants to do is make things. He wants to be a creator. He doesn't actually necessarily want to be, it wasn't so much about money, it was this opportunity to make things. And for me, that journey actually very much resonates, because I think that for me, I felt like I had some raw talent and I thought I had something to contribute to the world, and I made that measure very much geared against society's ideas of success. So for me, it was about these big opportunities, this opportunity to be the great success story, that somehow my happiness resided on the other side of some mythical success. It's also quite relevant because in actual fact, when I talk about what we do today, ironically enough, I talk about the idea of our business at IE being a boat builder. I talk to investors about this sort of thing. I also talk to clients. I love the analogy. I love the idea that we craft something and when it's finished, we push it out to sea. So I want to talk about a couple of different things. I'll be fairly brief here. I think that it says in the program that I was going to talk about incubating a startup within a startup. This is, I was mentioned before, our office in San Francisco. It's for this particular piece of business. I'm happy to have my long-term business partner and technical director of that business in the audience. And this is our current boat, and it's out at sea, and we're looking to do a raise in the US for that business, and it's very, 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 very exciting. Kind of sophisticated and a bit, it's come about from years of learning. But my first boat was actually a big pile of shit, and that was because I lived down at the farm, and I came up with this idea when I was 10. That's me. No, I'm not eating shit. My idea was to sell bags of manure door to door. I'd been to town to visit grandma, didn't go to the city very often, and I thought I'll go sell manure door to door, and I had some great success. I made $100. Unfortunately for me, my venture capitalist, my investor, my angel investor, being my mother, who used to drive our Dodge truck up to town and sit in the car while I went and knocked on the doors and sold $5 bags of manure, pulled the pin on me because she really didn't want to do that anymore, and my dreams were crushed, and tragically I had to go back to grade 5 and resume my education. Fast forward a few years, and here I am, obviously with my confidence back. This building here used to be the head office of a company called Norwich Union. And when I first started IE, and I was first looking for that big break in my life, my first ever client was a company called Hines Financial Services, a financial planner. Very briefly, if you know much about financial planning, or certainly back then, I couldn't believe it. I was pretty naive. I walked in and here's this person they called a financial planner. I'd assumed they were an expert. Fairly quickly worked out that all a financial planner does is like a used car salesman. They're just selling you something else. And what they were selling are products packaged up by other companies. What we thought was really cool is, well, why don't we, and so you go to this website, Hines Financial Services, but you eventually log into Norwich Union, and I was like, well, that's not really doing the smoke and mirrors trick very well. Why don't we use tech to overcome that? Long story short, ended up at Norwich Union's office, me at that age, front of the board, presenting this concept where we could mask Norwich Union's login. Now, bear in mind at this point, we'd done one website and had banked a check for $800. I was asked, how quickly could you roll out 1,500 of these at $5,000 a pop? Needless to say, that's me sitting out the front feeling like, hey, I'm off, I'm running. My God, I'm gonna make a fortune here. And that was great. And we were ready. I was pretty much, making bank. I was fantastic. My $800, I was forgetting about that. I wasn't gonna make websites anymore. And a week later, the guy who said that to us was fired, probably for good reason. And that was the end of that. 10 years later, Similar story, still out there pitching, still looking for the dream. This is fairly recent history. Had this amazing opportunity, the beauty industry, a la the first floor of David Jones and Meyer, not very well disrupted, lots and lots of opportunity, huge category moving online. I happened to meet Mark Tucker, who was the former MD of L'Oreal Australia. We became friends and we crafted this fantastic concept whereby we would build a really great disruptive business concept, and then we would go to David Jones or to Meyer and we would say, hey, why don't you be our business partner, because that would give us full range. That's the reason why there's no disruption in that category, because they control it. And it was a long shot, but a few weeks later we find ourselves, bang, I'm sitting in Paul Zara's office, the then CEO of David Jones, and Paul Zara, after 4 slides, says, stop, we're in, we want to do it. Here's my CFO, here's my head of ops, make it so. And off we went. That photo there was taken at the Ivy in Sydney. I cut Mark out of the picture because I thought he'd be frustrated, but next to us is a bottle of Bollinger. We're making bank. Here I go. I'm going to change the world in this category. 2 weeks later, Paul Zara left David Jones, and that was the end of that business. So I started thinking about my life in this context, and I think this is my life as a share price. So much of my life had been focused on these big moments and these high points. Some had gone kind of okay, some not so much. But I measured myself very much by the enormity of these differences, that somehow happiness sat on the other side of me closing these things. And so, there's some fascinating stories along the way, some major low points. This is, hey mum, I'm gay. It's a very major issue in your life when you decide to do that as an adult. But you fairly quickly recover with a lot of fun straight afterwards. You go right up here to Foyer Live and so on. But I was looking at this and I'm thinking, am I missing the point? And that perhaps that point, to take a lesson from, or to co-opt John Lennon's favorite line, that maybe my happiness or my purpose in life was happening while I was busy making other plans. That when I actually reflected upon what I was doing, I actually maybe had quite a few things to be proud of. And that in actual fact, that I should be seeking satisfaction not from the possible thing on the other side of the door, but actually the beautiful people that I have around me every day, the fantastic opportunities I have to do both the small things, the medium-sized things, and the big things. So when I started to reflect upon those, I thought I'd just share with you briefly in the last few minutes of my presentation today some of my views on what those constructs and those lessons in a work. This is a work in progress, obviously, but I thought, for me, I don't want to say I didn't feel like I was a person who fitted in. I fitted in pretty well, but where I didn't fit in was I wasn't a doctor, I wasn't a lawyer, I wasn't an accountant. I felt like a creative, but they usually stuck me on the business day to speak, because I felt that the creative process was what I really loved. And why I say know your craft is because I think we live in a world today where everybody, where there's still a societal tendency to put you in a box. You're a designer. I think everybody's a designer, and I thought Jack's speech really spoke to that. You're a lawyer, and I'd use the quick example. Does anyone here have a law degree by any chance? Anyone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a massive thing. Law schools are churning out lawyers faster. Far faster than there are meaningful jobs. And we have this huge influx of great, fabulous, intelligent people. But the interesting thing is that doing a law degree actually teaches you to be a fabulous problem solver. So perhaps in that case, the craft is not so much the law, but your ability to be a problem solver. And for me, working out what my craft was, which I still don't have a word for, but I have a level of comfort with, has really helped me to understand how I can continue to contribute meaningfully in life. Don't bet the house unless it's a sure thing. I think that in my experience, there's a tendency to go after everything at all costs. And in some ways, I guess maybe I hadn't done that. I always thought I was a little bit conservative and I wouldn't. And I'm very glad I didn't, because so often I see people searching for that one great event as I had contemplated at certain times. And I won't call out names, but I know both people here in Melbourne and a lot of people in the US who've had agency businesses like mine and gone, going to get me out of this services stuff. I'm going to build a product. I'm going to hit the road. And inevitably what happens is that the agency fails and the product fails. Not because the people aren't good, but because the probability is stacked against you. Often I refer to this as playing a couple of hands, which slightly contradicts this point. And it's taken me a very long time to really understand what I mean by this. Integrate everything is that I was the kind of person, I don't know whether anyone else is in this room, but I love the creative process. I love being involved in things. And to be honest, I'm very much a yes person. So if somebody comes in and says, do you want to get involved in something? I say yes. And the problem is that you can end up being spread too thin, and then you really can't do anything. So the alternative might be, we'll just do one thing and do it well. I don't think so. I think be one thing and share that amongst as many things as you can. Just don't try to segment who you are or divide yourself up, or in particular to get more meta to try and be different people or a different type of person to different things. The final one, I still don't really know quite what it means, so I might take the whose line is it anyway approach to this. I suppose, this film, I'm not a film buff, actually. I haven't seen this movie since I was probably watching it after Pretty Woman when I was 9. And I think it is a great story. There's a lot of great stories to learn from the narrative behind this. But in one way, I suppose you could say that the movie's fundamentally about a kind of nerdy guy that can't get the girl, that's not very tough, that goes and has a miserable experience with Mr. Miyagi, feels like he's doing the dishes and washing walls, only to find out in the end that he can kick the guy who scares the crap out of him in the face, get the girl, and everybody's happy. And I think that runs counterintuitive to, that narrative runs counterintuitive to everything I'm saying, because I think that hopefully we all get our butterfly kick, I think it's called, I can't remember, one day. But what's far, far more important is the journey through which you go through and you develop in life. So today, I got somebody in the art department to put this together, which I thought was quite funny. Today I continue to try to build boats and search for unicorns, to use that awfully cheesy line that's come out of Silicon Valley. But most importantly, to love every moment on the journey. So thank you, and I'm very proud to have been able to share that with you.